The sky bled copper as Evelyn Hartwell stumbled along the dust-bitten trail, her boots sinking into earth that felt older than forgiveness. The wind carried whispers of sage and sunburnt wood, a scent that once meant home but now only tasted of endings. Her fingers clutched the crumpled letter in her pocket, ink smudged where tears had drowned names she once said like prayers. Sometimes a heart doesn't shatter in one loud break, she thought, breath hitching. Sometimes it frays, one quiet stitch at a time, until there's nothing left to hold together. She had been walking for hours, though time had folded in on itself. The only rhythm was the hollow drum of her boots and the thin cry of a meadowlark somewhere in the amber distance. Evelyn's throat burned, dry not just from thirst but from words unsaid, the kind that curdle behind teeth until they taste like shame. The letter scratched against her palm. She wanted to throw it into the wind, but it felt like throwing herself. A sound broke the monotony, soft, almost secret. A voice, high and trembling, from behind a mesquite bush just ahead. "Please don't cry, ma'am." Evelyn froze. The world seemed to hold its breath. From the thicket emerged a small figure, dust clinging to her braids, cheeks streaked with the day's grime. She couldn't have been more than 7. A ragged doll dangled from one hand, its stitched smile half undone, a reflection of Evelyn's own unraveling. The girl's eyes, wide and solemn as twilight, met hers. "My daddy can fix sad people," she whispered with the kind of certainty only children and prophets possess. "He fixes broken things. You can come." For a moment Evelyn just stared, words sticking like burrs in her throat. She wanted to laugh, to tell the child she was beyond fixing, but the girl's small hand reached out, palm up, offering not salvation but something far gentler. Evelyn's fingers hesitated before curling around it. The skin was warm, soft against the calluses of a life that had turned hard too soon. They walked in silence at first, their footsteps weaving a fragile bond through the settling dusk. The land shifted as they moved, a cottonwood grove whispering overhead, cicadas tuning the night in a low hum. Evelyn's breath steadied, the weight on her chest easing by a fraction, though every step forward felt like trespassing into a world that wasn't hers. The girl spoke in soft, uneven threads of story. "Daddy don't smile much," she said, swinging the doll gently. "But he can make things work again. He fixed our roof when the wind tore it, and he fixed Bessie's leg when she got caught in a trap. He even fixed my dolly once when her head came off." A pause. "He can fix you too. You just gotta let him." Evelyn's lips twitched at that, a ghost of something almost like a smile. "I ain't sure I'm the same as a doll or a roof, sweetheart." The girl glanced up, serious. "You're the same as everything. Just got pieces." The path narrowed, roots curling like old hands beneath their feet. Shadows thickened, the world wrapped in a soft hush. Evelyn's chest tightened with the ache of not knowing where she was being led, or if she deserved to be led anywhere at all. Shame sat heavy on her shoulders. She imagined what a man would see when this little girl brought her home, a stranger with hollow eyes, carrying nothing but ruin. The cabin appeared like a secret in the trees, a small thing of timber and smoke, its edges softened by the fading light. The girl's hand squeezed hers before letting go, darting ahead with a burst of energy only children possess at the edge of night. "Daddy!" she called, her voice lifting into the warm air. "Daddy, I found her!" The door creaked open. He stood framed in the dim glow of the hearth, tall and weather-worn, the kind of man the land itself seemed to have carved. His hair was dark, threaded with sun, his eyes the color of a storm before it breaks, gray and steady, scanning her without judgment yet seeing too much. He crouched as the girl barreled into him, one callous hand brushing back her hair with a tenderness that betrayed the roughness of his frame. Evelyn's heart stuttered. There was a weight in the air, not heavy but grounding, as if this cabin were a place where the world's noise ended. She wanted to speak, to explain herself, to apologize for existing in their doorway, but words tangled and died in her mouth. The girl tugged his sleeve and pointed. "Daddy, this lady's sad? You can fix her, right?" For a moment, time stalled. His gaze shifted to Evelyn, and she felt as though those storm-gray eyes were sifting through her, not to judge but to understand the cracks. He didn't ask where she'd come from or why tears had carved their way through the dust on her face. He didn't reach for the letter she still clutched like a wound. He only stepped aside, the rough timbre of his voice low but steady, like gravel softened by rain. "Come in, ma'am. Ain't right to leave someone crying in the dust." Evelyn hesitated at the threshold. The air smelled of pine and smoke, of warmth that didn't belong to her. Her boot hovered on the step, a lifetime of running pressing her backward even as something unnamed tugged her forward. Clara May, the name had slipped from the man's lips when he knelt to her, watched with wide, expectant eyes, the doll clutched tight to her chest as if waiting for Evelyn to join their fragile little world. Her hand trembled on the frame. She thought of the letter, of the man who had broken her with polite words and cold ink. She thought of the town she'd fled, of whispers and side-eyed glances that branded her unworthy. And then she looked at the girl who had found her in the dust and the man who hadn't asked for explanations, and she stepped inside. The door closed with a soft thud behind her, shutting out the fading sun, shutting out the world she had known. The room held the quiet of beginnings and endings all at once. Silas Hollister's shadow moved across the wall as he turned back to the fire, and Evelyn felt the shift, not salvation, not yet, but the first stitch pulling two broken edges close. Outside, the cicadas fell silent, as if the land itself were holding its breath, waiting to see what they might become. The cabin smelled of pine resin and wood smoke, a soft warmth that clung to Evelyn's skin like something half-remembered. She sat near the hearth, hands folded tight in her lap, afraid to touch anything lest it vanish. Silas moved with quiet efficiency, the scrape of a chair against the floorboards the only sound he made. He set a chipped mug of water in front of her, not looking at her as if to spare her the weight of his gaze. She murmured a thank you that came out more breath than voice. Clara May hummed to herself on the rug, her small fingers sewing a crooked line through the frayed shoulder of her doll. The fire popped, and for the first time in days Evelyn's lungs expanded without a fight. Silas crouched by the hearth, adjusting the logs. His presence filled the space not with noise but with steadiness. He hadn't asked her name, hadn't asked what had broken her open and sent her stumbling into the dust. The silence was not demanding. It was mercy. She sipped the water, cool and clean, and felt it slide down a throat that had tasted only bitterness for too long. The room was sparse, rough-hewn table, a single shelf with tin plates, the walls lined with the faint scent of weather and years. Yet it felt less like a shelter and more like a hand extended in the dark. "You'll be needin' rest," Silas said at last, his voice low and rough as though he'd spoken little in years. Evelyn's fingers tightened around the mug. "I don't want to be trouble." "You ain't," he said simply, as if the matter required no argument. His eyes met hers then, and she caught a flicker of something beneath their gray calm, a shadow of his own fractures, a man who knew what it was to lose and still stand. Clara broke the quiet with a yawn, her braids slipping loose as she crawled into her father's lap. "Told you she was sad," she mumbled, half asleep against his chest. "Told you you'd fix her." Silas's hand rested gently on the back of her head. "Ain't everything needs fixin'. Some things just need holdin' steady a while." His gaze lingered on Evelyn as he spoke, and the words felt like they had weight beyond the moment, as if he was speaking not just to the child but to her. Later, when Clara had been tucked into a small bed in the corner, the cabin fell into a softer silence. Silas sat at the table, a broken chair leg in his hands, running his thumb along the splintered wood. Evelyn watched him from the hearth, the firelight catching on the scars that traced his knuckles, marks of a life that had known both work and loss. He didn't ask her to speak, but the quiet between them stretched, not heavy but expectant. She wanted to fill it, and that scared her more than the silence. "I lost my place," she said finally, the words so soft they almost drowned in the crackle of the fire. "My work. My name in that town. A man I thought." She stopped, the unfinished thought hovering like smoke. "All gone." Silas set the chair leg down carefully, as if giving her pain the same respect as the wood in his hands. "Sometimes things don't come back the way they were," he said after a moment. "Sometimes they come back different. Stronger, if you let 'em." Her throat tightened. What if there's nothing left worth fixin'? He looked at her then, steady and unflinching. Then we start with what is. A knock shattered the fragile cocoon of the room. Sharp, abrupt, the kind of sound that drags the world back in. Evelyn's heart lurched as Silas stood, the boards creaking under his boots. He opened the door to the cool night, and the wide figure of Sheriff Amos Kincaid, his badge dull in the lantern light. Behind him, Martha Quinn's silhouette loomed, her sharp eyes catching everything. "Evenin', Silas," the sheriff said, though his tone carried more weight than greeting. His gaze flicked to Evelyn, and she felt herself shrink. "Heard tell there was a stranger out by the grove. Folks get nervous this time of year." Martha's lips pursed, the corner of her mouth curling as she took in the sight of Evelyn's torn dress, the damp trails on her cheeks. "Ain't proper, is it? A woman showin' up in the dead of night, all secret-like." Silas's voice came quiet but iron-strong. "Ain't a crime lettin' someone rest." He shifted slightly, the movement subtle but protective, his broad frame placing itself between Evelyn and the doorway's judgment. Clara stirred at the sound, peeking over her quilt with sleepy eyes. Evelyn's shame rose like a tide, the old familiar heat of being seen and found wanting. She could hear the whispers forming in Martha's tongue, see the questions in Amos's tired eyes. But Silas didn't flinch. His presence was a wall, not aggressive but unwavering. "She's stayin'," he said simply. "Ain't nothin' more to it." The sheriff nodded slowly, his glance softening as he tipped his hat. "You always did take in strays." His eyes met Evelyn's, not unkind. "Ma'am." When the door closed again, the quiet returned like a held breath released. Evelyn's knees gave, and she sank back to the hearth, her face buried in her hands. The tears came unbidden, raw and unguarded, spilling into the warmth of the room. "I ain't worth it," she choked. "Ain't worth defendin'. I'm just nothin' now." The scrape of a chair. Then Silas knelt in front of her, the fire throwing light across the sharp planes of his face. He didn't reach for her, didn't offer soft words to fill the hurt. Instead, his voice was steady, low enough to feel more than hear. "Then leave it here. The nothin'. We'll make something out of it. That's what we do, me and Clara. We take broken things, and give 'em another chance." He took her trembling hands and placed them gently over Clara's small ones as the girl patted over, half asleep, doll dragging on the floor. Clara's voice was a whisper of dandelion seeds. "Told you Daddy can fix sad people." Evelyn let out a sound halfway between a sob and a laugh, the kind of sound that feels like the first crack of light through a boarded window. Silas didn't move, didn't let go. His hands were steady, anchoring hers. Dawn came slow, bleeding pale gold through the cabin's single window. Evelyn stood at the threshold in borrowed boots, the world outside washed clean by morning. Silas poured coffee in the background. Clara's giggle broke the hush like a promise. Evelyn touched the doorframe, fingers brushing the grain of wood worn smooth by years. For the first time in what felt like a lifetime, the horizon didn't look like an ending. It looked like a door she might walk through. Behind her, Silas's voice came, quiet but carrying. "Ain't everything fixed in a day. But you start. That's all it takes." Evelyn stepped into the light, her heart thudding with something dangerously close to hope, and felt the world hold its breath, waiting.